Welcome to the Prelims Heist of IAS by Heart, your one-stop solution to crack prelims. I am Vijay Kumar. We are going to discuss ancient, medieval and modern history of India with more weightage given to modern history of India. Let's see the questions. The first question is, which of the following sources help us to understand the history? So the question is about the sources which help us to understand and study about history. Options are numismatics, mounds, carbon dating and epigraphy. So this is a simple question, but we have to know about these terms to answer the question. Let's see the description. So numismatics is the scientific study of coins. It helps us to understand the socio-economic status of a particular civilization. For example, the Indo-Greeks were the first to introduce the technology of coin making in India. So the Indo-Greeks are also called as Bactrian kingdom. And later the Kushans were the first to release gold coin in India. So this describes about the socio-economic status of a particular civilization. Prior to the Indo-Greeks, Indians were using punch marked coins in this shape like this. Okay, so next is mounds. Mounds are a type of material remains of the past which when are excavated help us to understand the history. So the mounds can be excavated vertically or horizontally. The vertical excavation gives about the details of different periods of a civilization, and the horizontal excavation gives about the details of a particular period of a civilization. Okay. Next is the carbon dating technology. The carbon dating technology uses C14 radioactive isotope which has a half-life of more than 5500 years. So once the organism is dead, it starts decaying the C14 radioactive isotope. Thus we can understand the age of the dead organism. Then comes the epigraphy. So epigraphy is the study of inscription which too helps us to understand history. There is something else called paleography. So paleography is the study of old scripts. So answer to this question is all of the above. That is numismatics, mounds, carbon dating and epigraphy. So they all helps us to understand the history. Let's move on to the second question. Second question is, consider the following regarding Indus Valley civilization. Options are, people of Indus Valley civilization were the first to produce cotton. Iron was not known to them. Let's see the explanation. So the Indus Valley civilization existed between 4000 to 1500 BCE, and the people of Indus Valley civilization were the first to produce cotton. So cotton was one of the important materials that were traded by the Indus Valley people. And since they belong to the Bronze Age, iron was not known to them. The technology of iron was not created, and thus the iron was not known to them. So answer to this question is both 1 and 2. Here we have to know about BCE. BCE means before Common Era. So BCE is equivalent to BC. Since BC is affiliated to a particular religion, historians prefer BCE and CE. CE is equivalent to AD. BCE means before Common Era and CE means Common Era. So let's see the next question. Third question. The foreign travelers who visited Vijayanagara kingdom were? Options are Ibn Battuta, Niccolo di Conti, Abdul Razak and Domingo Paez. Let's see the explanation. So Ibn Battuta was a Moroccan traveler. He left an account of Harihara I's reign. Harihara was one of the first king of Vijayanagara kingdom, and he belonged to Sangama dynasty. So there were 4 dynasties in the Vijayanagara kingdom, and Harihara I belonged to Sangama dynasty. Then Niccolo di Conti, he was an Italian traveler. He visited during Devaraya II's period, and Devaraya II is also belonged to Sangama dynasty. Then comes Abdul Razak. He was a Persian traveler. He also visited during the period of Devaraya II. And the fourth one is Domingo Paes. He was a Portuguese traveler. He described about the ancient city of Hampi under Krishna Devaraya. The Krishna Devaraya belonged to Tuluva dynasty. So other prominent travelers during the Vijayanagara kingdom were Duarte Barbosa and Marco Polo. Here Barbosa also came during the period of Krishna Devaraya. So answer to this question is all of the above. That is Ibn Battuta, Niccolo di Conti, Abdul Razak and Domingo Paes. All of them came during and visited during the period of Vijayanagara kingdom in India. So let's move on to the next question. So fourth question is, consider the following statement. In the second battle of Tarain, Muhammad of Ghor defeated Prithviraj Chauhan. In the battle of Talikota, Vijayanagara kingdom defeated Bahmani Sultanate. So the second battle of Tarain, this statement is correct. And the statement about the battle of Talikota, this statement is wrong. Let's see the explanation. So, considering the Battle of Tarains, in 1191 CE, the first Battle of Tarain held. And in this battle, Prithviraj Chauhan defeated Muhammad Ghor. And in 1192, the second Battle of Tarain held. And in this battle, Muhammad of Ghor defeated Prithviraj Chauhan. This led to the successful invasion of Muhammad of Ghor in India. So, this is an important event in the history of India. This battle and subsequent wars led to the establishment of Delhi Sultanate in India. After Muhammad of Ghor, his slave or his general established slave dynasty in India. So his general's name is Qutbuddin Aibak. He established this slave dynasty. It is also called as Mamluk dynasty. So with the start of slave dynasty, this era of Delhi Sultanate started in India. So the era starts from 1200s and it lasts up to 1526. So in 1525-26, Babur invaded and subsequently it led to the establishment of Mughal rule in India. Then let's move on to the Battle of Talikota, that is in 1565 CE. It was the Bahmani Sultanate which defeated Vijayanagara kingdom, not the other way around. So with this battle, Vijayanagara kingdom came to an end. So answer to this question is A, that is 1 only. Let's move on to the next question. So this question is, with respect to modern history of India, the Europeans who arrived first in India were. So this is a very simple question, but we have to understand the fundamentals of this question, because with the arrival of Europeans in the 15th century, the modern history of India starts in India. So answer to this question is Portuguese. Let's see the explanation. So India had commercial contact with Europeans since time immemorial. Since the ancient times, India had commercial contact with the Europe. With the arrival of Alexander the Great of Macedonia, this trade relation became more intimate. However, during the medieval and modern period, the Arabs and Ottomans constantly captured this region of land-based trade routes and they blocked the routes one by one. And when the Ottoman captured Constantinople in 1453, all the land-based trade routes were blocked for the Europeans. So this forced them to search alternate routes, and it was the period of Renaissance in Europe. So there was development of science of navigation, and there was spirit of adventurism, and rulers like Henry the Navigator established schools of navigation, and it was the Vasco da Gama under the patronage of a Portuguese ruler reached India in 1498. and he reached India at a place called Calicut in Kerala. He was warmly welcomed by King Zamarin. And when Vasco da Gama returned to Portuguese, his total profit was 60 times the cost of his voyage. Thus, this boosted other Europeans to follow the routes of Vasco da Gama to India. The next 100 years, that is the 15th century, was dominated by the Portuguese. After the 16th century, the British, Dutch followed the Portuguese trail and they established their colonies in India. And this started the period of modern history in India. Let's see the next question. Question 6. Match the following. So this question is about revolt of 1857. It deals with the places of revolt and their respective leaders. The places given here are Delhi, Kanpur, Jhansi and Lucknow. And the leaders are Nana Sahib, General Bakht Khan, Begum Hazrat Mahal and Lakshmi Bai. We know that for Jhansi it is Rani Lakshmi Bai. So for C it is option 4. So for C option 4 comes in both B and C. So if we know any other option, we can conclude the answer. Let's see the explanations. The revolt of 1857 is also called as Sepoy Mutiny, and some call it as the first war of Indian independence. So the revolt of 1857 was an important event in the history of India. It boosted the spirit of Indians in the later independence movements. The Sepoy Mutiny occurred majorly in the northern part of India. So let's discuss the leaders and their places. In Delhi, it was General Bakht Khan. He was a general of the Mughal ruler called Bahadur Shah Zafar. So Bahadur Shah Zafar was the last king of Mughal Empire in India. In Kanpur, it was Nana Sahib and Hansha Tope. Nana Sahib was the son of Bajirao II. Bajirao II was the last Peshwa of the Maratha Empire. So with the end of Sepoy Mutiny, the Mughal rule and the Maratha Empire came to an end. And we know that in Jhansi it was Rani Lakshmi Bai. And in Lucknow, the revolt was led by another important women leader called Begum Hazrat Mahal. So the answer to this question is C. That is, for Delhi it was General Bakht Khan, for Kanpur Nana Sahib, Jhansi Rani Lakshmi Bai and Lucknow Begum Hazrat Mahal. Let's see the next question. Seventh question is, Gandhiji reached Champaran in 1970 to address the plight of people of Champaran. What was the issue that the people were facing? So, with respect to modern history of India, UPSC gives more weightage to the Gandhian era of mass movements. And since Gandhian era of mass movement starts with Champaran Satyagraha, this particular question is very important. So options are mill strike of labourers of Champaran, forced plantation of indigo plant, high land revenue for the farmers and high salt taxes. Let's see the explanation. So in 1915, Gandhiji returned from South Africa. His political guru Gopal Krishna Gokhale asked Gandhiji to travel across India to understand the plight of people of the country. In 1916, in this situation, during the Lucknow session of Indian National Congress, Rajkumar Shukla, a peasant leader of Champaran, asked Gandhiji to come to Champaran to address the plight of the peasants there. The issue was that the peasants of Champaran were forced to plant indigo plant. So they are forced to cultivate a plant called indigo plant. It is a commercial crop which is mainly used to make dyes. So the problem is it reduced the fertility of the soil and the price was also fixed by the Europeans. This again reduced the income of the peasants. On hearing this, Gandhiji reached Champaran and started inquiring about the issue. So the authority in the Champaran asked Gandhiji to leave. But Gandhiji refused and he was willing to take trial and imprisonment. This forced the authority in Champaran to appoint a committee in which Gandhiji became a member himself. Thus, the issue of the peasants of Champaran were greatly reduced. So, answer to this question is forced plantation of indigo plant. Let's discuss the other options as well. The mill strike of labourers happened in Ahmedabad in the year 1918. And high land revenue for the farmers, it was a pan-Indian issue. With respect to Gandhiji, it occurred in Kheda Satyagraha in 1918. And high salt taxes was one of the issue of 1930s civil disobedient movement. Okay, so the answer to this question is forced plantation of indigo plants. Let's see the next question. So this question is about the Lahore session of Indian National Congress in 1929. The question states, the Lahore session of INC 1929 is very important in history because the options are: the Congress passed a resolution demanding complete independence. The rift between extremists and moderates was resolved in that session. A resolution was passed rejecting the two-nation theory in that session. So let's see the explanation. The Lahore session of INC 1929 passed a resolution demanding complete independence. So answer to this question is complete independence. Resolution was passed. So we have to note that the 1922 session of INC is very important because it was the first presidency of Jawaharlal Nehru, and it was the first time Congress demanded complete independence. It is also called as Purna Swaraj. And we have to note that 26 January of 1930 was celebrated as Purna Swaraj Day. So option A, that is the first option, is correct. That is, the Congress passed resolution demanding complete independence is the right answer. So one comes in both A and C. So we have to contemplate about the third option as well. So third option states that a resolution was passed rejecting two-nation theory in that session. So the concept of two-nation theory starts only in 1940s and it ended with the Mountbatten Plan of 1947. So this will not come under 1929 session. Also, the rift between the extremists and moderates was resolved in Lucknow session of 1960. Thus, answer to this question is 1 only. Let's discuss the next question. This question is about Anglo-Mysore Wars and their respective treaties. The Anglo-Mysore Wars discussed here are 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th Anglo-Mysore Wars, and the treaties are Treaty of Mangalore, Treaty of Madras, Subsidiary Alliance and Treaty of Srirangapatna. Let's see the basics. So the Anglo-Mysore Wars were fought between Hyder Ali and later by his son Tipu Sultan with the British East India Company. So the first Anglo-Mysore War was fought between 1767 and 69 and it ended with the Treaty of Madras. The second Anglo-Mysore War was fought between 1780 to 84 and it ended with the Treaty of Mangalore. Third Anglo-Mysore War fought between 1790 to 1792 and it ended with the Treaty of Srirangapatna. And fourth Anglo-Mysore War was fought in 1799. It ended with the Subsidiary Alliance. So answer to this question is C. Let's discuss these Anglo-Mysore Wars shortly. The first Anglo-Mysore War started in 1767 when Hyder Ali came to know that British Company is forming an alliance to attack Mysore Kingdom. He took the offensive and surrounded the British Kingdom. This forced them to sign the Treaty of Madras. And second Anglo-Mysore War started because British East India Company attacked Mahe Port, which is a French port under the protection of Hyder Ali. And when they attacked the port, the second Anglo-Mysore War started in 1780. During the course of war in 1781, at a place called Porto Novo, Hyder forces were defeated. And in 1782, due to an illness, Hyder Ali died. And after the death of Hyder Ali, his son Tipu Sultan took over the kingdom of Mysore. And since in 1784 there was a stalemate between the Mysore kingdom and British Empire, and the Treaty of Mangaluru was signed between them. The third Anglo-Mysore war started because the fight between the Tipu Sultan and the Travancore kingdom. British got involved and it ended with the Treaty of Srirangapatnam, and half of the Mysore kingdom was given to the British rule. And the fourth Anglo-Mysore war was due to Wellesley's subsidiary alliance. So Wellesley was forced in subsidiary alliance on Mysore, and this led to the war. And in 1799, during the course of war, Tipu Sultan was killed and subsidiary alliance was imposed on Mysore kingdom. So answer to this question is C. And let's move on to the next question. So this is our last question. The question is, who introduced the Vernacular Press Act? So the question is, who introduced the Vernacular Press Act? And the options are Lord Ripon, Lord Lytton, Lord Mayo and Lord Stanley. Let's see the explanation. The Vernacular Press Act was passed in the year 1879. It was introduced by Lord Lytton. Lytton was a conservatist. He wanted to suppress the vernacular presses. So he brought the Vernacular Press Act in 1878. Thus, the purpose of this is to ban the vernacular presses. Vernacular means the native language. The first victim was the nationalist paper called Soma Prakash. It was started by Dwaraknath Vidyabhushan. It was the Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar who contemplated to start the paper called Soma Prakash, but later he became an advisor of Dwaraknath Vidyabhushan. So with this we conclude our session. Thank you.